said the action is in the overall interests of national health security.
The President took the decision and gave the directive that the National Sports Festival, Christine Edo 2020, should be postponed as a precautionary move against the spread of COVID-19.
The principle of social distancing has to be respected. That is, preventing or advising against congregation of large number of people. Starting from the National Sports Festival.
The federal government has banned all foreign trips for public and civil servants till further notice. Now, this was one of the decisions reached by the Presidential Task Force for the Control of COVID-19 after its inaugural meeting, where members were mandated to strengthen the national response strategy for COVID-19.
Government has banned all forms of travels out of the country for whatever reason, whether for meetings, bilateral, multilateral, conferences, seminars, workshops, presentations, negotiations, and any form of other ceremonies. This ban will remain in place until further notice and until the situation of the pandemic nature of the coronavirus abates.
And the Lagos State Commissioner for Health, in the wake of the third confirmed case of coronavirus in Nigeria, has advised passengers who were on board British Airways flight number 75 that arrived Lagos on the 13th of March 2020 to stay at home and isolate themselves for 14 days.
We've started the contact tracing process. Thankfully, she obeyed the instructions and she confined herself to her home, where she's only been in contact with her immediate family. That helps us tremendously because it limits our contact tracing to the manifest of the flight, which is BA75, that arrived on the 13th of March.
And now to the National Assembly, where the Senate is considering the amendment of the 2020 Appropriation Act, which was passed last December following the impact of the coronavirus on the global economy. Now, this was contained in the interim report of the Senate Joint Committees on Finance, Appropriation and National Planning.
The downsizing of the Appropriation Act as passed by the National Assembly is inevitable.
While personnel costs at all times must be met, we can agree on 80% or 60% funding of overheads.
I mean, there are certain things that we need to do. We need to look at cost of governance. We need to look at a lot of duplicate agencies that we have.
In the meantime, the House of Representatives is seeking alteration of Part 1 of the second schedule of the Constitution to enable the transfer of some items from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent list. National Assembly correspondent Lami Ali reports that the alteration will enhance decision-making on issues of priority.
Matters relating to police should be moved to the concurrent legislative list so that states can also have their own police.
The advantage of this will be everyone to your own advantage and everyone to manage your disadvantage.
As we promised, this house will be a transparent house and a house of accountability, and there will be reforms. This is one of such bills.
The House Committee on Information, National Orientation, Ethics and Values has acknowledged the need for more funds for government media agencies in the country to achieve set objectives as the voice of the nation. Now, this was an observation by the committee chairman, Olusegun Odebumi, during an oversight on the 2019 Budget Appropriation Act to the National Broadcasting Commission, News Agency of Nigeria and Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria.
We have 5 foreign offices, but because of finance, we cannot operate them. Therefore, only one in New York is currently in operation.
I'm sure when we change these transmitters, we will see the effect, and the effect will be an increased revenue.
And on business, 24 states of the Federation have met eligibility criteria for drawing out of the $700 million World Bank's performance-based grants. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed, while inaugurating the National Steering Committee for the State's Transparency, Accountability and Sustainable Program, says the Public Finance Management Initiative aims to promote fiscal discipline at the subnational levels,
which includes making sure that the states prepare their annual audited financial statements and publish them, making sure that they prepare their budgets and publish them, making sure that they clean up their payroll and have biometric data of their staff.
We hope that the states will take the opportunity through SIFTAS to really strengthen their PFM systems so that the results are sustained beyond SIFTAS.
And that concludes the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria will continue with Kingsley and Kirin after this break. Do stay with us.
Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad, or even end up in prison.
Treat your family to a cereal that's made from the natural goodness of maize and soya protein and specially combined with Grain Smart, a smart combination of vitamins and iron, so that they have the right kind of energy to help them reach their full potential and turn the simple into amazing. Eat up and carry go, because nothing do you. Golden Morn, make every day amazing.
Nestle, good food, good life.
My name's Mr. Muftau Abiodun Balogun. We started this business 4 years ago, and this is the production outlet where we do about 4,000 to 5,000 birds per day. With the closure of the border recently, we've been experiencing massive surge in demand. Our sales per day now is going to be between 15 to 20,000 birds. We needed to expand all avenues because of the multiplier effect it's creating. And the most interesting thing about this closure is that many of my farmers today are farmers we recruited recently, and they are young graduates. What the government is doing will lead us right. And I can tell you, if the government sustains this thing, sky will not even be our limit.
Choose Dano Milk for your family, because 100% of our milk is sourced from our farms. This means that we control the entire production process from grass to glass, taking great care in every step to ensure the milk that gets to you is of high quality, great tasting, and enriched with essential nutrients that are great for your family. Available in Dano Cool Cow, Dano Full Cream, Dano Slim, and Dano Flavored Milk.
right, now it's time for business stories, and with the impact of coronavirus on the global economy, experts, of course, are making all kinds of recommendations with regard to how to incentivize the trading of commodities through the capital market. This and more on business stories with our correspondent, Ronami Girani.
Experts concluded at the end of the International Conference on the Nigerian Commodities Market 2020, hosted by the Securities Exchange Commission, that the capital markets can be utilized as a means of diversifying the nation's economy and contributing to the government's revenue. The Acting Director General of the Securities Exchange Commission, Ms. Mary Uduk, said that while Nigeria is endowed with agricultural, metal, and energy commodities, the nation's potential in these areas is still unrealized. She insists that if a vibrant commodities trading ecosystem can be developed and institutionalized, problems that affect agriculture and other commodity subsectors, such as poor pricing and low foreign exchange earnings, can be addressed. Meanwhile, Nigeria's inflation rate increased by 12.2% in February 2020, the highest increase since April 2018. A report from the National Bureau of Statistics indicates that increments were recorded in all subsets of the Consumer Price Index, and top on the list was the Food Index, which rose from 14.85% recorded in January 2020 to 14.9% in February. The rise is attributed to an increase in the prices of major household commodities such as bread, fish, meat, vegetables, oils, and cereals. With oil prices dropping globally and the continuous spread of the COVID-19 virus amongst other things, experts fear that inflation may continue to rise. Global markets are experiencing a tumultuous week as governments make moves to support businesses and protect their various economies. The United States is making plans for a relief package said to be worth about $850 billion, while the French government is prepared to guarantee 300 billion euros in loans, pledging that no French company will be allowed to collapse. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
Ronami, with business news, we appreciate that. Now, next is newspaper review.
Our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyobe, is right here with us on the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning.
Yeah, Bayo, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, let's begin with the Blueprint newspaper for today's review. On the right-hand side of the nameplate, we have two headlines there. KEDCO. KEDCO means Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. KEDCO intensifies move to Meta, Kano, Katsina, Jigawa customers is on page 14. And below that is a Police Institute will provide strategic manpower development, says the IGP. That story is fully captured on page 5. And now, directly below the nameplate, Oshomole, humbled, says, I have learnt my lessons. Two riders to that. APC lifts suspension on Lawan and Abdulkadri. Party chair admits God allowed what happened to happen. The story is on page 6. Now, following that is Buhari floors Atiku in 40 million naira libel suit. It's on page 31. Now, the lead story this morning on Blueprint newspaper, as Nigeria records third COVID-19, let's not push our luck too far. National Assembly warns. That's on page 6. But we have about 6 riders to that. Lawmakers want handshake stopped for now. Suspend flights from UK, Italy, and others. They cry absence of testing centers in North and Southeast. Amidst pandemic, Abuja doctors begin strike. We will explore all avenues to protect ourselves, our people, says President Buhari. Now, shifts convocation indefinitely. That's on page 31. The photo story, of course, speaks for itself. And below that, we have Benin, Togo, Niger Republic owe Nigeria 30 billion naira electricity bill. And that's on page 34. That's where you get the details. And below that, Nasarawa Assembly proves SSG over 1 billion naira school project. It's on page 13. Study Quran to enhance knowledge, Christian leaders urged. It's on page 8. Federal government suspends non-critical spending, defer Eurobond sale. That's according to the minister. It's on page 34. Gunmen abduct 2 siblings in Ibadan, demand 100 million naira ransom. Details on page 9.
All right, Kieran, let's also take a look at the Nation newspaper. Above the nameplate, we'll take 2 headlines there. Mambila hydropower project sites still fishing grounds. You have details inside. It's a special report by the paper. Lagos explosion. The boy who is aged 5 battles head injury. Another recuperating. Details can be found on page 39. And below the nameplate, beggars get 2 weeks to leave Niger. That's page 5. FCT and Gombe doctors begin strike. Details on page 10. COVID-19, that's the kicker. Buhari cancels trips as Nigeria gets 3rd case. And you have 3 riders to that, and indeed you have other stories that are inside. We'll just go through the headlines very quickly. 30-year-old UK returnee positive, 300 on watch lists. Those coming in must self-isolate, federal government insists. And then inside the paper, in greater detail, you have President will protect Nigerians. Dangote's Indian contractor isolated. No community transmission in Nigeria. Italian potentially contagious. Sports festival halted, and PDP calls for more measures. ECOWAS suspends meetings. Joshua's fight delayed. Euro 2020 and Copa America postponed. And Facebook has $100 billion for small businesses. And U.S. screens 44,800. Now, the photograph there you see is that of an American, Jennifer, who's receiving the coronavirus vaccine test run at KZ Permanent Washington Health Research Institute. And that took place on Monday. Now, APC will bounce back stronger, says Oshomole. Suspended national officers recalled. All suits to be withdrawn from courts. Ajimobi and Chukuma take NWC seats, that's National Working Committee seats. Oshomole Giadom embrace that meeting. National Secretary Bulama absent. And right at the foot of the front page, Supreme Court reserves ruling in Zamfara APC's request for judgment review. That's page 10. Bayo, thank you.
Let's start with running stories. The fire at Abuja has been put out, and body's recovery had ended with the 20th body recovered. However, a baby was also recovered from the rubble. The baby was taken to the mother. Initially, the baby did not recognize the mother because the mother had ended up with a swollen eye. But on close look, the baby smiled and embraced up with the mother. Also, a mother of one of the students of the Bethlehem College, particularly the head girl, the mother was also elated. She had given up hope that probably her daughter had died. The girl was recuperating in hospital. Meanwhile, on the COVID virus front, Nigeria has registered the 3rd case of COVID virus. It involved a 30-year-old woman who had returned from the United Kingdom via British Airways Flight 75 on 13th of March. She was advised to self-isolate, and she adhered to that very strictly, and because of that, she is now, her contact persons are only her immediate family. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and the Ministry of Health, Lagos and the Federal Ministry of Health are making effort to trace all the passengers on that flight, BA75, that arrived on March 13. Meanwhile, a friend of the person who has tested positive now indicated that she was at the same summit with Sophie Trudeau. Remember her? The wife of the Prime Minister of Canada, who also tested positive from her return from the United Kingdom. This brings to 3 the persons that have tested positive to COVID virus. However, already the second contact person from the index person has already tested negative and has been released. So in the isolation ward 2, we now have 2 cases, the index case and the new case that has now, when they are under observation, they are in isolation 1. But when it is confirmed and you are being treated, they move such patients to isolation 2. Meanwhile, the number of in seriously endemic countries under Nigeria's watch list has been increased to 13. The new lists that were added include the United Kingdom, USA, Norway, Netherlands, and Switzerland. The Minister of Health has indicated that persons arriving from these 13 endemic countries identified by Nigeria will be subjected to what has been described as secondary screening. Meanwhile, all other persons who are arriving from abroad are advised on their own for the interest of themselves, their family, and the general public to self-isolate for the normal 14 days. Meanwhile, the federal government has prohibited public officials from travels abroad. This was announced by the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, and the prohibition covers all earlier approved travels. President Muhammadu Buhari also has ordered the suspension of the National Sports Festival, otherwise known as Edu 2020. This is part of the measures to restrict any activity that involves gathering of too many people. Across the continent of Africa, 3 African continents have declared a state of emergency as a result of coronavirus. They are Ghana, Rwanda, and South Africa. Measures they have adopted include travel restrictions from countries they describe as endemic, a shutdown of schools and worship centers. So far, the National Assembly has also expressed concern that so far we have 3 serious testing laboratories across the country, one in Lagos, one in Irua, and one in FCT. The Senate lamented that there is no serious laboratory test center in the southeast, and there is none in the whole of northern region also. At the political front, the All Progressive Congress chairman of the APC, Comrade Adam Oshiomhole, resumed normal official duties yesterday with a call to all members to sheathe their sword. He has called for a truce as part of the olive branch suspension which were imposed on the Deputy National Chairman North as well as National Vice Chairman North have been lifted. The party has also advised all members with pending cases in court to withdraw them. The party chairman has asked that all put what has happened in the past behind them. Meanwhile, he says the concern of the party is now to summon the Minister of Health and ask why flights to certain countries, especially the endemic countries, have not been cancelled or suspended. So, APC is getting back, trying to get his acts back in order and trying to focus on the challenge that facing the nation, coronavirus.
One of the things that matters is the sustainability of the peace. That will go a long way in ensuring that it has stabilized. If it's sustained, for a long time, then that would be good for the party.
Do you know that the definition of politics, one of the definitions is resolution of conflict? So conflict is part of politics.
Exactly. But when it becomes every day, when it comes every day, it becomes a problem.
Yeah, well, of course, we're discussing the update on coronavirus in our conversation segment, with regard to what we are saying. I'm sure there are a number of pertinent issues that are on the table. I mean, as our producer indicated, Nigerians on social media are asking why, and you just raised the question again now, why our borders are still, as it were, open, why we are still operating open skies, even from countries that have already shut their borders, except to their nationals, who are returning. Europe, 26 countries.
What actually amazed me was that last week, when President Trump of the U.S. banned, travels from any part of the world, the EU was not happy about that, and they came out to say that. But just after that, EU now came up to say, look, we're closing down our borders.
Well, I think even in our case, it's instructive. The 2 cases we have now, one came from Italy, the other from United Kingdom. The third one was a contact from the Milan case. So therefore, prohibiting contacts from those endemic countries is very germane. But it also has international implications. You cannot just wake up and ban. Some countries have done it. Ghana, for instance, has said that visas will not be given to persons from those endemic countries to visit Ghana.
Ghana has cancelled all their visas.
Precisely.
All visas, all category of visas.
Yes. On Monday, what we discussed here was the impact of coronavirus on foreign relations. I mean, these are extraordinary times. So it's not a question of saying you having a valid visa and therefore you have a right, of entry into a country. No, those who are being permitted to return to the countries are either they are citizens or those with resident permits, long resident permits. And this is something that we also have to, yes, we are on our guard, we are on our watch. The Lagos State Governor was said to have been at the airport yesterday in Lagos to monitor and observe, how the screening is being done. But look, if you go to other airports elsewhere, you can see, for instance, that ground transportation is very well organized. But what do we have here? I mean, you have virtually everybody who is hustling. So who takes the passengers from the airport, to their respective homes? What is the contact that you have? The driver drops the cab driver drops the passenger, comes back to the airport, mingles with his colleagues, and then mingles with other waiters and receivers at the airport. And then you're having these two cases, as you have said. One of course, tested negative from the UK, and then this one who is positive now.
I think we're enjoying a great deal of luck in this situation, honestly, because the contact points are just too many. And as Kingsley pointed out, if a driver takes one home, he comes back again to pick up the passenger. And meanwhile, in the interim, he's making contact with people, his own colleagues too,
And that's why the National Assembly say we should not overestimate our luck. Luckily for us, prior to the invasion of coronavirus, we had land borders closed. Otherwise, now our neighbors, Benin Republic, Togo, and Ghana, have all reported coronavirus.
Plus Cameroon.
Yeah. So we have all around.
The most important thing is that at home, the campaign for precaution is well on course. Everybody, of course, avoiding handshakes, large gatherings, and then, of course, sanitizing or otherwise washing your hands. But those who have it from abroad, I think that something should be done about them. All right, Bayo Atoyebi, thanks a lot for being around. We're going to see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. Watch reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we got ahead with our two topics for discussion this morning.
Nigeria is our country, and it's the only country we have. Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It will be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Engineering skills and technology define the quality of television transmission output. Training and retraining of appropriate personnel on the management of modern equipment is therefore a key competition strategy in the dynamic television industry. NTA TV College, Jos, invites relevant desk officers to special engineering courses as follows. 1 week course on audio engineering, operations and maintenance. Date 20th to 24th April 2020. 1 week intensive course on electrical power, earthing, lighting, uninterrupted power supply UPS, inverter and solar system. Date 1st to 5th June 2020. 1 week intensive course on studio broadcast equipment and outside broadcast operation. Date 15th to 19th June 2020. 1 week course on new technologies, optical fiber, IP technologies, automation storage and wireless technology. Date 10th to 14th August 2020. The venue for all courses is NTA Television College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Course fee 40,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
Back for a minute to the old school. Everybody love me only when I do what I do. Cause when I come through, I got the power of cool. The power of cool.
Some of the girls were having difficulties in their academics, and they now decided to ask us to help out. And we've decided to teach them other things, other skills. To invest in a woman is really to invest in a nation, because the women really are the heart of the family.
Touching lives.
The program is Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA Network Service. Of course, I've informed you that our topic is on the coronavirus pandemic. Now, let's give you an update.
The distance between Nigeria and China, though not immeasurable, is extremely far. These might have allayed the fears of many in January that coronavirus, which the World Health Organization has declared a global pandemic, will never find its way into the shores of Nigeria. However, the inevitable global transaction which compels people to move around the world is one factor that has aided the spread of the virus. Nigeria eventually confirmed its first case on February 28, 2020, when an Italian on a consultancy job tested positive a few days after entering the country. The federal government, in collaboration with Lagos State government, traced those he had contact with and isolated them. Only one of them tested positive, while others were allowed to reunite with their families. The second positive case progressively responded to treatment and was discharged after testing negative. Nigeria has received commendation from the World Health Organization for her proactive response in containing the coronavirus pandemic. Recently, a 70-year-old woman who returned from the United Kingdom to Enugu was suspected to have contracted the virus, but she tested negative after some days in isolation. On Tuesday, March 17, 2020, the federal government confirmed a third case when a 30-year-old Nigerian who returned from the UK on March 13 tested positive. The federal government has also made it a point of duty to update Nigerians on information about the COVID-19 several times a week. And as part of precautionary measures to prevent the spread of the virus, President Muhammadu Buhari also approved the postponement of the National Sports Festival scheduled to take place later this month in Benin City, the Edo State capital. How should Nigeria maintain her onslaught against the spread of COVID-19? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will attend to this and other issues shortly.
All right, many thanks there for that background. Here with us in the studios, we have 4 guests, 2 ministers. First, we'd like to welcome once again the Honorable Minister for Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Alhaji Lai, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, thank you.
Also here with us is the Honorable Minister of State for Health, Dr. Olorunumbe Mamora. Dr. Mamora, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. And we also have seated with us in the studio, Garba Abari, is the Director General, National Orientation Agency. So it's a pleasure to have you this morning. Good morning.
And Professor Abdurrahman Nasidi. Professor Nasidi is the Provost College of Health Science, University of Africa, Bayelsa State. It's good to see you here today, sir.
Thank you. Nice to have you too.
All right. By the way, Professor Nasidi is also the former Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. And he was a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria 6 years ago when we had the Ebola outbreak with Patrick Sawyer bringing Ebola into Nigeria from Monrovia, Liberia. So you have a lot of questions to answer today, Professor Nasidi. But first, let's begin with Dr. Mamora, Minister of State for Health. Well, we got the update of the third case of coronavirus in Nigeria. As of this morning, what is the latest?
Well, the latest is that we're still looking at the situation in Lagos, particularly regarding the third case, the contact tracing of those on that flight, and an announcement has been made by the government of Lagos through the State Commissioner of Health, Professor Bayomi, asking all those on that flight and who are still within the country to, to report. And then, of course, following on other contacts as well. And because contact tracing is very, very critical in this kind of situation, where you have been able to establish that one of these people in the flight are tested positive.
All right, sir. In the course of the program, we'll be delving into the intricacies of that because, yes, we have just 2 cases, but the contacts that I've made should also be followed. Let's come to the Minister of Information.
I was just going to ask, because there were 2 cases before this third one.
Yeah.
What is the status of those 2 cases? Because one of the headlines, right out of the headlines that we read this morning, said, look, the Italian could still be potentially contagious. What do we know about those 2 cases, the index case and then the contact case?
Yes, the index case, an Italian that came in from Milan, and of course moved around, and of course the contacts were traced, and he was immediately isolated and undergoing treatment, and of course he's been clinically stable. When we say a patient is clinically stable, it means that at least the symptoms with which the patient came in are no longer there. But that is not to say that the patient is fit for discharge, because apart from clinical assessment, you still have to do laboratory testing. And in this kind of situation, you want to do 2 tests at interval of 48 hours, and when these 2 tests are consistently negative, that tells you that the viral load is no longer significant as to be able to give transmissions. That's when you want to discharge. So it's been monitored to that effect. The second case, you recall that's the contact of this index case from Ogun State. And in fact, initially, it wasn't even manifesting any symptom. With the patient that we call asymptomatic. But, it's like a carrier status, kind of. But based on routine testing, based, again, on a high index of suspicion, he tested positive, and so he was quickly taken in. And after a few days, was tested again, it was discovered to be negative. So chances are that the immune system had overwhelmed the virus itself, and since he had tested consistently on 2 occasions, so he was discharged. That's the difference. That the first one, the index case, manifested symptoms. The other one did not really manifest symptoms. That is the contact from the index case.
All right, there'll be more explanations as we make progress. Now let's go to the Minister of Information. So in circumstances like this, it's not easy for any government. Across the globe, most governments are finding it so tough and difficult to contain this virus, and are taking some measures, even such measures as closing borders and asking people not to come into their country. At this point, can we know what the direction of our government is thinking, with respect to precautionary measures? Well, we understand that the 2020 Edo Festival has been suspended so far.
Thank you, Kirian. I think the first thing to understand is that this disease is not indigenous to Nigeria. That this disease is actually imported. So the measures that a government like Nigeria ought to take is what we've done, which is, 1, to ensure that we listen to the experts, we listen to WHO guidelines and advice on how to man all our entry points. As of today, these 4 out of 5 of our international airports are functional. And we have put in place in those airports, thermal scanners. We've also put in place a team that interrogates, passengers. We've also made it mandatory for airlines to circulate forms, before the passenger arrives, and which would tell the history of the passenger, where it's coming from. The Nigeria, as of today, in addition, has added about 12 countries, which is China, South Korea, Iran, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Netherlands, France, Germany, and who have indexes of more than 1,000. People have tested positive. On the list of those countries, that when you come from there, you would also have to do a second screening. And this second screening entails actually looking at your records and verifying that those records you have put in place are actually true. Because part of the problem we have is that some of the passengers have been less than sincere with us. Yeah, there's a case of a passenger that came from Wuhan, but when she got to the airport, it declared as he came from Nairobi. It took the concerted efforts of the Center for Control Immigration and our embassy in China to actually identify the fact that this guy actually came from Wuhan. And when we started tracing, we found out that all the addresses he gave were fake. But by midnight, we were able to pick him up at the fake address, and immediately he was tested. He was tested, and incidentally, he even tested negative. But the issue is not whether it's negative or positive, but that he misled everybody. Now, and so part of the efforts the government has put in place, like this secondary, screening for people coming from high incident countries. And again, yesterday, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 was inaugurated by the federal government, and part of the decisions of the committee was that we should ban all travels by all government officials for whatever reason, whether it's seminar, whether it is a meeting, whatever. And this applies not just to public servants or parastatals. Two, one of the decisions we have taken that we believe is going to help to control is also to give travel advice to Nigerians that unless it is very essential, they should postpone all travels at this time. Thirdly, we advise them that anybody who is coming from any of these high incident countries should self-isolate. But you see, when we say self-isolate, we do follow up. As a matter of fact, it's to the credit of the third index case, that when she came in from the UK, she went on self-isolation. When she was not feeling fine, she contacted the Center for Disease Control. They went to her place, took her, vitals, her temperature, and when they confirmed that she was, positive, moved her to the infectious disease hospital. Now, then yes, it's true that there are a lot of calls for travel bans here and there. What we can assure Nigerians is that the government will not hesitate or shy away from taking any measure that would protect Nigerians from this virus. However, we will not, take any knee-jerk. There'll be no knee-jerk reaction on the part of government. You can see that even the cancellation of the National Sports Festival is part of the awareness of government that certain decisions must be taken to protect Nigerians. We are watching the situation. We are monitoring them very closely. We're not unaware of some countries that have, that have imposed travel bans. But for us, I think there are certain things that we need to do, which are even more important probably than travel bans.
This issue of a travel ban that we are raising at the moment, we are looking at what is happening globally. You have rightly said that this is an imported disease. And that means that the only sure way of getting it and spreading it in Nigeria is through importation. And who are these importers? There may be Nigerians who are residing in those countries who may wish to get home. In America's case, for instance, they say, look, fine, you want to come back to America, make sure you are an American. And when an American, when you get there, you will be quarantined for 14 days. Right, because a situation where it's allowed to escalate, is where we find ourselves in danger. So we appreciate that fact.
You see, Kiran, I said this government will not hesitate to take any measure to ensure that it is controlled. However, we will not take any knee-jerk. We will not be able to knee-jerk reaction. Let me just give an example. When the first index case was reported, there was panic. And they were attacking Chinese. They were knocking on their doors and said that, go and test them. The first case was not a Chinese. The first case happened to be an Italian. Now, you see, let us, please, all Nigerians, take ownership of this epidemic. Some people today are behaving as if this thing cannot even, affect them. Coronavirus is not a respecter of anybody, whether you're a minister or you're a laborer. Now, but the way we are behaving in Nigeria today, it's as if we're immune. And that is why, you see, people should be conscious, social, see that this social distancing, we should adhere to the basic ethics of, personal and respiratory hygiene. We should listen to our doctors, listen to the experts.
All right, thank you very much, Minister of Information and Culture. Professor Nasido, let's bring you into the conversation. What is your reading of coronavirus against our experience with Ebola, which was in a pandemic?
Well, actually, first and foremost is the nature of the viruses, the two viruses. The Ebola virus is a little bit more inert. It's not as active, even though very contagious. You acquire it by touching anything that has come into contact with the patient. But it's not transmitted via aerosol or through the droplet. So its contagiousness is that you have to come into contact with either the patient or the forceps that he has touched, or his body secretions, or even the dead body. In fact, we realized for the first time in epidemiology that dead bodies became more contagious than living body. This was shown by Ebola. So, but this virus is a very strange virus. It's still part of the coronaviruses that included the SARS virus and the SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome virus, which devastated the world the year 2003, 2004. Then the MERS virus, which is the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome virus. All of them jumped from animals, including this new virus. So the first one, SARS, jumped from civettes, into humans, and the transmission went along the area where you have these civettes worldwide. Then the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome virus jumped from camels, mostly. So it remained virtually around the Middle East, where you have a lot of camels. We were afraid that it would come to North Africa and northern Nigeria, but luckily it didn't come. Now this one combines that contagiousness of Ebola virus and the common cold flu. So it means it's highly transmissible and very contagious. So it makes it a little bit more dangerous, not necessarily more deadly, but more dangerous, to acquire. Then lastly, it has a last stage of infection that is very, dangerous. The Ebola virus gives what we call biphasic, stage of disease. It affects the patient. The patient is, really in pains, devastated, and in severe state of health. Then, after maybe 3-4 days, he improves. Then you think he's getting better. Then the 3rd or 4th or 5th day, you can come and meet the person dead. But this one, the infection is very gradual, and it can, shoot up and then go to a stage where no medical system can help you. That is when it descends into the lungs, and it causes what we call the severe respiratory syndrome. It virtually coagulates the alveoli, it makes the lung like rubber. So no health system, you can imagine if people are dying in developed countries with high-tech medicine, and still they can't save them at that stage. That is what is making, everybody to be afraid of this disease. Then lastly, as compared to even the flus that we knew before, and even the SARS and MERS-CoV, the death rate of those that are known to be infected is about 10 to 20 times higher than this flu. 0.1% versus about 2-3%. And in countries that joked a little bit, they didn't take it very serious, the case fatality rate is even higher, like Italy, 5%. Now in Iran, it's getting almost up to 10%. So it's really frightening.
Yeah, it's indeed nice that he clarified the issue of the source of this disease, because of course I've had some people as guests on this program who believe that it's a biological weapon, so to speak, developed in a laboratory. There has been the news flying around before certain confirmations on the actual source of this virus. But I want to stay with you because you have made some comparison between Ebola and this virus. Nigeria was able to handle Ebola with certain therapy that they developed locally. And of course, we had about 2 weeks ago that there is a claim that there is a drug that could, be used to treat coronavirus in Nigeria. Have you made an assessment of that claim? Or do you also think that there's a possibility of Nigeria repeating what we did, during the Ebola saga?
Actually, I have to congratulate Nigerians. We have very intelligent people. We have wonderful medical personnel, and I think we can do a lot. And this is shown by the fact that within, let's say 3-4 days, we could identify the virus, sequence the virus, and even share it with the world. We are so confident. We have good laboratories now. We have young, Nigerians that can do a lot. And luckily, we have up to 6 laboratories in Nigeria now that can run this test. That means we can participate in the development of the vaccine worldwide. So now on other claims, we have to be very scientific. We have to be very careful. Before you jump and say you have a cure for a particular disease, you have to at least must have passed some stages of trying those drugs or therapies. If you don't, and you go into the media or into the world and say that you have them, you could ridicule yourself and ridicule your country. So what we're afraid is, there are several claims. During HIV/AIDS, there were claims that there were vaccines developed, there were this, but they turned out to be, a very negative claims that even, slowed down our response. Then we have to also be careful in terms of presenting to the world, information that could mislead other countries. Let me just give you an example of Ebola. Ebola actually started between, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia within a belt, and that belt is occupied or inhabited by a tribe called Kisi, the Kisi tribe. And when they started seeing the syndrome, and the team working on Lassa confirmed that this could be another deadly virus, there was a traditional healer who also claimed that, she had medicine against Ebola, she had this, and she's from the same tribe. So, people trooped to her from both Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, thinking that they were going to be healed. So, of course, all of those who went there caught the disease and died. The claimer also caught the disease and died. That is the time they realized that it's dangerous to make such claims.
Well, Dr. Abari, before I come to you, at one point, the Honorable Minister of Information already said, look, we have to guard against complacency. Professor Nasidi, we have had some myths about coronavirus. It would appear that some of those myths are already being busted. One, that coronavirus doesn't affect black people. We have seen, unfortunately, a Nigerian medical doctor from Italy who died in Canada. We have also seen the player, the midfielder for Juventus, Matuidi. He's a midfielder and he's a black person. He has the virus. What do we really know about the virus? Does the Negroid race, have genetic resistance that is repellent of coronavirus? And some people also say that the weather here, let the coronavirus come, the heat will soak it up.
Well, you're absolutely right. All are possible. The viruses, are made of just coats and genes. So, some are RNA, some are DNA. So they could, say they have specificity for some strains or for different type of humans or animals. But I don't think this is the case in this corona issue. If it were to be, we will have not been, having even the few cases we're already seeing. The same thing happened with HIV/AIDS. If you remember, in the early days, 1985, 86, 87, in Lagos, when we diagnosed first cases of AIDS, there were so many resistance and people fought us. In fact, I was virtually locked up for reporting HIV/AIDS, that it's not an African disease, it doesn't affect the black race and all this. But unfortunately, that myth was quashed by, now we jumped to almost 3.5 million Nigerians having AIDS, and then now it has gone down to about 1.8 million. So there's no race specificity in these viruses. They can cause any, they can shock you.
Yeah, let's begin, Dr. Barry, here at this point. We have some misinformation about coronavirus in Nigeria. Now that, of course, the social media is, has platforms, where people are exchanging information and sharing information with respect to this. Which is the best way to go in terms of educating Nigerians on this coronavirus and what we should do and should not do with respect to preventing this very dangerous disease?
Thank you very much. You remember when we were here last week or ultimate week? At that time we were discussing only, or we were having only the first index case, and what we talked about was, well, the disease is here with us. Whatever needs to be done now should be in the area of containment. What do we do in order to ensure that we restrict the disease from going beyond what we can contain? And we said that is as much the function of information made available to the people. What is expected of each and every one, what is expected to be done at institutional level, and what is expected to be done at groups level. Only yesterday, the National Orientation Agency invited the Center for Disease Control for an engagement with our field officers. What we need is actually to take the correct information from the experts. Get the correct information from the expert. In so doing, we upscale our communication strategies, the kind of messaging that we are going to be developing for airing. You must have noticed that the first jingles that the NTA carried from the NOA had been stepped down, and we substituted with another one, which actually carried a more expanded information. As from today, tomorrow, driving from the information that we have gotten from the Center for Disease Control yesterday, a new information is coming up that will guide. But the most important issue is we cannot say we should not be complacent, and we as institutional level remaining complacent. The complacency we are talking about here should be such that must not be allowed to come from the people because information has to get to them. If information does not get to them, obviously the general feeling is it doesn't affect me, or it is only in Lagos, therefore it will not go to Maiduguri, or it is only in Lagos, it will not come to Kano. These are the situation that if allowed, or this kind of belief, if allowed to persist, will lead to complacency. So we are definitely getting information from the experts and sending information out to the public through proper channels. Now, yesterday the federal government has announced steps that need to be taken. But even on the social media, I saw yesterday the reaction of the average Nigerian. Well, but these are only the elites who travel. So it's only top government officials who travel. They are the ones that go for medical checkups. So how does that concern me? You have seen the trend, the reaction of the average Nigerian. But in this case, the situation is different. We have to have public ownership of the fight against coronavirus. We have to have public ownership of how to contain it. We have to first take responsibility of safeguarding ourselves. By so doing, we safeguard the neighbor. By so doing, the neighbor safeguards the other person. And this can only be done using correct information coming from the experts.
All right, Dr. Barrett, thank you very much. Let's bring in again the Honorable Minister of State for Health. Where we say, yes, watch out for information, but we do know that the world today suffers from a deluge of information from a wide variety of sources, most of them formal, others informal, plus the kind of challenges that we face with the social media. We are seeing the responses in other climes, say in the EU, in the UK, and even in the US, in the developed world, the kind of steps that they are taking. What's the rationale for what we are seeing still in Nigeria, that passengers who are coming from otherwise heavily impacted regions, say the European Union, are still being, after going through the normal screening at the airport, still being advised to self-isolate. Some other countries where the coronavirus is, such as the US, test kits are being made available, that it is not only when you are virtually done and probably help is far away or probably almost irrelevant that you should go for testing. So why are we restricting us now to mere self-isolation rather than also making test kits available at more locations other than the entry points, which are 4 now, in terms of aviation opportunities?
Yeah. Now, the test kits is like they're scrambling all over the world, because every country wants to have as many as possible. But the reality is that no country, it's unlikely that any country will have enough test kits. Therefore, in the circumstance, wisdom dictates that you need to be prudent with what is available to you, so that you deploy this to where and when needed as much as possible. So, which means that you prioritize the use of the test kits available to you. So that's a factor, and you don't want a situation where, when it becomes most important for you to use these test kits, they are no longer available. So it's just a matter of being prudent in how you deploy the use of your test kits. Now, having said that, I'm happy with what Dr. Barry said. Information, right information, appropriately communicated and efficiently managed. Those are key things. And again, I think it was the Honorable Minister of Information that said, it is everybody's, everybody's concern. All of us have to get involved in this thing. Again, what has been said repeatedly here is complacency. The price of complacency is huge. It is huge. In fact, it's better for everyone to see himself as a potential candidate in terms of the COVID-19. Everyone. So when you have that kind of attitude, then it will help you to change your own even personal attitude. Because, you see, what we fear most is community transmission. Community transmission, because we do know that 81% of people who contract the infection, one, may not even show symptoms. That is, they are asymptomatic. Or they manifest mild symptoms to moderate. So in which case, I mean, if somebody around you has it because it's not been tested, declared positive. You don't know the risk, and that person moves around in the community. So this is, for me, this is probably what has led to what I call extraordinary measures being taken by, virtually all the countries now. Extraordinary measures.
Yes.
And if people don't change their attitude, of course, I'm sure the government of Nigeria too will not fold its hands. The government of this country may be forced to impose extraordinary measures. Extraordinary measures in terms of limiting even those rights of, freedom of association, freedom of movement, which these are things that are happening. Some of the government may be compelled to enforce compliance. When we talk of social distancing and all that, some people still say, this thing, just like you said, this thing can't get to us. It can get to anybody.
Exactly, because Nigeria is a very religious country, and people gather from Sunday to Monday, having religious activities either in the mosque or in the churches and everywhere. Now, in South Korea, the initial spread in there came from a church program, right? And the Reverend was warned initially, but he didn't take that. But when it happened, he apologized to the nation. Now, so back to the kits issue, test kits issue. I recall that when the WHO offered the first set of test kits to America, there was rebuffed, saying that America has, the wherewithal, to do that. But today, they are scrambling for test kits in America at present. And the promised 5 million pieces is yet to manifest. Now, the question is, we have 3 points where this can be tested in Nigeria, if I'm right. One in Lagos, 5 right now, right? Okay, some are complaining that none is in the northeast or in southeast, as the case may be. So what is the spread?
Well, yes, you have the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research in Lagos. You have in Luth. You have in Abuja, National Reference Laboratory. You have in Irua, in Edo, and then Ede. Is it because these centers in the network of NCDC laboratories, and they had something on ground which they developed on to be able, because it costs a lot of money, and it's like maximizing what you have on ground, supposed to trying to start something fresh.
I asked that because I was wondering how the Enugu, the 70-year-old woman, how was she tested? Because
because the samples were taken, you can take samples and then
send to.
Yes. there's a protocol.
Yeah, but Honorable Minister of State of Health, you talked about prudence in utilizing current test kits, which is, a plausible and reasonable point to make. But there's also been the report by various international media with regard to a donation by Jack Ma, who is one of the founders of Alibaba, an e-commerce platform. He's donating face masks and test kits to the African continent. And he says that the landing point for these test kits would be Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, from where they will be distributed throughout the African continent. Is the Nigerian government aware of this, and is it keen into this donation by Jack Ma, who is a Chinese, by the way?
Yes, definitely. The Nigerian government is aware of that, and we're taking advantage of that. We have so many other, the UAE, the other day when we met with the diplomatic corps, the UAE also promised to assist us in various ways, donating thermal scanners, donating some consumables and what have you. So we are keen into all these sources of assistance coming to us because we all need it.
Dr. Abari, I want to return to you before we will come back to the Minister and then Professor Nasidi. Honorable Minister of Health talked about community transmission, which is often regarded as perhaps one of the most proficient means of transmitting excuse me, this virus. What have we done so far in terms of public enlightenment by way of going to locations that are mass gatherings? When you were here last week, we raised the point. Our markets, for instance, you can't have social distancing in our markets. And then, while we were reviewing the newspapers a moment ago, Kriya and I and Bayo Atobi, we also raised the spectre. What we are seeing now, the 2 cases that have tested positive came from outside of Nigeria. When you go to our international airports, you see the way cab drivers are hustling for passengers. Now we're going to have to start tracing those who were on the same flight with the lady who's tested positive. The taxi driver who took those passengers would have gone home, to drop the person home, gone to their own homes, come back to the airport to be hustling again for other passengers, mingling with their co-drivers. So what kind of messaging are you taking to these particular locations, marketplaces, motor parks, and elsewhere with regard to social distancing and the need, to observe all precautions in the light of what the world is going through?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, this is where we say there are supposed to be, or we should develop content that are specific for specific audience. The issue of community transmission is very key, very central in whatever measures you will take because of our social setting. Because of our social setting. You can hardly enforce social distancing by the way we do our social interaction. Our trading and marketing system doesn't encourage that. But you have to make people aware. Only today, when I came in here, we did the greeting. We didn't shake hands. Now, people might not come to terms with that reality yet, because shaking of hands is more of a cultural thing. It's something that you even subconsciously do. So you have to make people aware of why they have to reduce a physical contact and the reason for it. Only yesterday, Saudi Arabia announced, Kirian was talking about the religiosity of our people. Saudi Arabia announced yesterday that except in the Haram, all mosques have been stopped from congregational prayers. All mosques have been stopped from congregational prayers. But my concern here are 2 levels. One, at the level of what you have the picture you have just painted of what happens in the airport, which is actually one of the vulnerable avenues of transmission, through different levels of contact between travelers who are coming to the country, people who take them to a destination or to their hotels, the person who transports, who comes back. This is one level. But there is another level Take, for example, our IDPs, the internally displaced persons camps, where you find thousands of people living in conditions that are not very healthy. In fact, they are not healthy, with even water and the sanitation at very low levels. Now, in the case of the IDP, for example, in Maiduguri, the National Orientation Agency had stationed a vehicle that is dedicated to going around all the 3 major camps. The Mary camp, the what they call the primary camp, and all the other camps that you find that are hosting children, women, and the aged in these areas, talking to them in local languages on the need to keep personal hygiene. Now, but that's only talking to them about that, but also trying to establish some kind of leadership hierarchy, so that in every corner of the camp, there are people that you can talk to and who can pay more than an ordinary attention, to the way and manner in which this kind of social interaction is taking place. It's a very, it's one area where we have to pay a lot of attention. Yesterday, last week, the other time we were talking here, the relationship between the national and the subnational levels. What happens in our markets, in our butcheries, in our motor parks, and even in the schools now. We are taking the messaging to the schools. And like I said yesterday, after our consultation with the Center for Disease Control, there are special messaging, now reflective of the current reality. From the first time when we witnessed the industry to what we are seeing now. Now this messaging will now reflect the current reality, with the information direct from the Center of Disease Control. In fact, they are the ones that are now developing the messaging. They are the ones developing the messaging, and we take to relevant points for dissemination.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a very interesting conversation because if you take into consideration what's happening elsewhere in other countries, we don't even have the technology, that they are applying at the moment. A situation where in some countries they are fumigating the streets, right, with some form of sophisticated technology that they are using to do that. So it's a part of the measures they are taking. Let's return to the Minister of Information. Still on the issue of social distancing. Government's precautionary measures may not be sufficient in this fight. Is there any way the government is involving organized private sector, including religious leaders, civil society organizations, associations, cultural associations in this country, to see how they can also make input in terms of assisting the government to reach out to their followers? Because these are people who can galvanize a good number of Nigerians and families as well. We started the example of what happened in South Korea, where somebody held a crusade, that led to the exacerbation, of the transmission of a coronavirus in that country.
When we met yesterday, that is the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, one of the recommendations is that there's need to strengthen collaboration between the various tiers of government, the private sector, the faith-based organizations, donors, and partners. And one of the decisions taken was that a subcommittee of the task force should engage the faith-based organizations on both sides. And also, it was also decided that at the next meeting of the national I think National Council of States, that the Minister of Health should also brief all the governors on the need to take ownership of this disease. At my own level too, realize that so far it's only NTA, FRCN, NAN, and VON, which are all government-owned platforms that have been helping with the advocacy programs. I've said that we need to also invite the entire BON, Because Organization of Nigeria, that this is a national emergency. This is not a government disease. This is a pandemic, which is global. I mean, and they should also try to assist us by giving us airtime. Unfortunately, I've spoken to the president, and she's been quite enthusiastic. And we are meeting on Tuesday to see how we can expand, the platform. So, on the part of government, we do realize the need and necessity to take this, to seek for collaboration of states, local governments, faith-based organizations, partners, and donors. And like Dr. Abari said, if Saudi Arabia can cancel all congregational prayers, Tunisia has done the same. Now, of course, we won't take these measures without engaging the various bodies and organizations, but it's one of the options that might probably help in containing this pandemic.
All right. Thank you, Professor Nasidi. There's a point here. Sorry if it appears to our viewers that we are sketching scenarios. The intention is, of course, not to scare you, but just to see our level of preparedness. And you can see all our guests in the studios are persons who have hands-on experience in terms of information management or dealing with public health issues. Let's take a look at this. We keep talking about level of preparedness. We have, the test centers, which have been established, 4 or 5 of them, and then the screening at the airports. Let's look, for instance, into the level of either awareness or aptitude of our healthcare givers. Do they have the same orientation, or are they getting the same requisite training to handle this kind of emergency? Because even at the best of times, with the greatest respect, to healthcare providers, we see sometimes how patients, in dire need of medical assistance, how they are often treated shabbily. That's one. So, do they have the right orientation, particularly, say, at the subnational level, where you and I don't have an eye? And then, when we still talk about, say, okay, it is not every case that you are going to find in Lagos. God forbid, as Nigerians will always say, suppose there are cases elsewhere. What do we know about the isolation centers that have been constructed? Is it when the case arrives that you start constructing an isolation center? Or are we going to have the attitude that, when you say the word isolate, keep the person far away, almost like a leper in those days that, when leprosy wasn't treatable or curable? Keep the person far away. What do you know about this, and what would be your suggestion as to how we can prepare for this? Because if you listen to the metaphor, and I'm sure you have listened to the metaphor being used by world leaders, it is a virtual war situation they are in. It's not where war breaks out that you begin to talk about your strategy.
Well, thank you. I think this is very vital, or these are vital questions you raised. We are now at a stage where we should assess our state of readiness, because it's an ongoing, epidemic, and according to Tony Fauci, he said the worst is yet to come. So these are leading experts worldwide that are actually, warning the world that this epidemic, or now pandemic, could affect more people. And the frontline soldiers that come into contact with this disease are the healthcare workers. So in our preparedness, we must take into consideration, how to protect those healthcare workers. If not, you will be shocked. And like what is happening in some other countries. One, we give an example that, in Italy, 10% of all cases actually affected health workers. 10%. In Iran, just yesterday they were announcing that 40% of those that came down with the disease were actually healthcare workers. Even a minister of state and also were involved. So our priority must be mobilizing the healthcare workers, to know exactly what to do and empower them. It's not just training them, upgrading their knowledge about the disease and all this, but we must build their confidence by providing, protective gears, protective facilities that will make them do the job better. But unfortunately, I have to say that we are not yet ready. We are not fully performing that, the way we should for now. We are trying, but we should be factual that we need to do more in that area. We need to get, the healthcare workers, really ready for this. And I'm happy you said it, not just at federal level, but at state level, at LGA level, and so on and so forth. Then just to, a rider to that, what the Honorable Minister of Information said, that, time has come for us to call all the governors, call all the governors and address them, and that it will be done by Minister of Health. I said no. I say no. It should be done by Mr. President. Mr. President should call all state governors. And if even he's not going to declare state of emergency yet, we don't need to wait until we're in the state of, all these other countries. Yes, it took Italy 4 weeks to move from 3 cases to 21,000 cases. It took Iran 5 weeks to move from 8 cases to 16,000 cases. So we are now at that stage where we have to combine containment and mitigation activities.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
I think I must correct the question.
Yes.
The Professor Nasidi, I said, I did not say the Minister of Health is going to talk to the governors. Yes. I said that this matter will be escalated to National Council of States, which is presided over by Mr. President. But at that meeting, the Minister of Health will give a scorecard, that briefing. So that's what I'm saying. So which means it is at the highest level, because all governors are there, all former heads of states are there, all service chiefs are there. That is what I said. So really, we appreciate that it's a matter that has to be escalated to the highest level.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a robust conversation on this. Of course, we have been able to understand a few more things concerning coronavirus. And the countries that delayed was hit presently, as you rightly said. And we just announced yesterday that 2 WHO workers just contacted the disease. All right. Now, Nigerians are beginning to make contributions to this conversation. We'll just take a very few of them because time is not on our side at the moment. We have Akeju Olabaju. He says Nigeria is a new hub for international travelers, but care must be taken to see that it is not at great cost. The federal and state public health must be more alert to ensure safety of Nigerians.
Utulo Sunday, as a precautionary measure, Nigeria needs to close our borders for now, even though it will have economic consequences. Health is more important at this juncture.
Mike Ayako says, as many countries are locked down because of novel coronavirus, this will lead to serious economic crisis, which effects are full of force. I don't understand this word. He said the layoffs, etc. But the most important now is adequate preventive measures and accurate vaccines to cure the menace.
All right, Jibrin Saleh has this tweet. It says, so long as we don't close our borders, the methods being adopted so far will backfire. If one person on the flight is infected with this virus, that person is not showing signs, there's a possibility of transmitting it to all other passengers, which at the moment can't be detected.
Chris Simeon, federal government and Minister of Health should rise up and do the needful.
All right. We also have this one from Ibrahim Oduaje. It's quite commendable, the actions that the federal government has taken so far to help manage and control the spread of the virus. However, the federal government should heed the call by experts and other well-meaning Nigerians on the need to restrict travel from highly impacted COVID-19 countries.
Johnson says, why will Nigerian government allow people traveling to the country? Look at the woman from the UK now has brought coronavirus to the country. Well, God is not sleeping.
Well, all right. Okay. Well, Kieran, those are the tools that we can take. We'd like to thank other viewers, Chibuzo, Usman Bani Kantu, Bashiru, Chris Sibia. We already read one of yours, Sadi Michael Omakoji, and Yerima Hamza. We'd like to thank you all for sending in your tweets. Of course, this is a running story, and from time to time, we'll return to it. We've had a very high-powered panel discussing matters arising from coronavirus in Nigeria and what steps are being taken to reassure you. But remember, as our guests have said, each of us has to show and indeed take personal responsibility for what's playing out. Kirian, on that note, I would thank our guests, Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Elijah Lai Mohammed. Thank you for being with us on the program this morning. Honorable Minister of Health Honorable Minister of Health State, Dr. Olorunbe Mamorora, thank you for being with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
DG NOAA, Dr. Abari, thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And Professor Abdulsalami Nasidi, former Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. He was on top of the Ebola in 2014, and you can see his insights have also been very useful this morning. He's Provost, College of Health Sciences at University of Africa in Bayelsa. Professor Nasidi, thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning
Thank you
Nigeria.
for having us.
All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing health still, and that has to do with primary health care, which is usually the foundation, indeed, of a healthy nation.
My name is Yemi Adetunji, the COO downstream of NNPC. Ever since the closure of the borders, we have seen a marked reduction, about 10%, in terms of the evacuation of what you call loadouts of PMS, which equates to about 6 million liters per day, essentially because of the border closure, because of certain aspects we've also done as NNPC, working with our sister organizations, sister agencies, Nigerian Customs, DPR, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and other agencies, and also what we call Operation White, which is an intervention we have put in place to trace and track every molecule of petroleum products as they arrive in country through the vessels, as they move through the depots, and as they are evacuated with trucks out of the depots.
Move now! The red light won't kill you! Move now!
To dey disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say I no go dey do am again. Because change begins with me.
Cross the other side of the road. I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge. Because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me past where I dey go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich. You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
All right, now straight into the second conversation this morning, as arrangements are said to have been concluded for the formal flag-off of the Integrated Medical Outreach Program, an initiative of the federal government aimed at bringing succor to underserved and unreached Nigerians, particularly mothers and children from 0 to 2 years.
All right, Kyria, just before we came on air a while ago, we needed to refresh our memories. We deal with a lot of subject matter. The program actually was flagged off on Monday by the Vice President, and we saw the Honorable Minister of Health at that particular event. Now, the medical outreach program is expected to provide free primary health care services such as immunization, treatment of minor ailments, health talk and counseling services, and screening for non-communicable diseases, plus general medical consultation to Nigerians.
And we have 3 guests already seated here with us in the studio to discuss the program. Well, it is meant to enhance primary health care services in the country. And let's first of all welcome Dr. Faisal Shuaib, Executive Director and CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning, viewers.
All right. We also have with us Dr. Omotayo Bolu. Dr. Omotayo Bolu is of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Bolu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning. And we have here Dr. Fiona Braka, Officer in Charge, World Health Organization. Thank you for being here.
All right, so let's begin with the CEO of the Primary Healthcare Development Agency. What is this all about, and how is it different from unfortunately, not so successful primary healthcare initiatives that we have had in recent times?
Right, so this is an opportunity that the federal government, working with the National Assembly, states, local government, and our development partners have put in place to really get primary healthcare services to those in underserved and unreached communities, right? So the most important aspect of this program is the fact that we're not just spreading out primary healthcare services across the nation to every individual. We've looked at the data and we've identified 409 local governments out of 774 local governments where a large number of children are not being reached with immunization services, and a large number of women are also not being reached with maternal services. So we've put all of those together, and we are using 3 rounds of what we call the IMOP to actually focus on how we can reach children with the vaccines that they need, and also ensure that we're able to provide primary healthcare services such as screening against common diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, malnutrition, and also treating minor ailments such as malaria and typhoid fever. So it is one opportunity that the federal government, working together with a number of stakeholders, are trying to bring the dividends of democracy to those people that live in the hardest to reach areas. So those same people that we continuously miss, here's an opportunity to identify them, the poor, the have-nots in the hard to reach areas, peri-urban slums, making sure that they get the primary healthcare services they require within 3 consecutive rounds.
Well, just clarify this. I mean, we have 774 local government areas. So where is this, what is the coverage area for this initiative?
So 409 local government areas have been identified based on the data, right? So in the course of several years, several months of giving these primary healthcare services, where are those areas, those riverine areas, those hard to reach communities, communities that are around mountainous areas? So we're not just limiting ourselves to the primary healthcare structures. We're moving from settlement to settlement, making sure that those people who are perennially missed now have an opportunity to get basic quality primary healthcare services.
All right, and these 409 council areas are spread across the nation.
Absolutely.
It's not predominant in one particular area.
At all. It's
all right, let's come to Dr. Omotayo Bolu, U.S. Center for Disease Control. I take it that you understand the concept of what he's trying to do, and
Yes.
I want to look at it from the point of view of the U.S. model, in this kind of situation. So, what's your take in what they're doing, and are you sure that is going to be effective, the way he's propounding it?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. So many of the donors and partners, including the US CDC and US government agencies, have been working very closely with National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. And one of the things, like Dr. Faisal just mentioned, is how can we improve the routine immunization coverage? How can we improve access for primary healthcare services to those that need it? And so we've sat with the NPHCDA, we've reviewed the data, and the approach in which the NPHCD is taking to reach the unreached, underserved, is definitely a way of improving the coverage for routine immunization. It's a way of getting services to those that need it the most. Even in the US, when you have places that are very far off, there are outreaches that are taken out to the communities in some places in the US. So definitely this approach would help improve coverage, would help improve access, would help get Nigeria and the citizens to where they need to be.
Dr. Fiona Braka, what's the role of the WHO in this?
So the recognition of universal health coverage in its bid to contribute to sustainable development goals, the goal on health to have health for all and better well-being for all citizens is critical. And as WHO, we are promoting universal health coverage, that every citizen around the world should have access to health services no matter where they are born, where they live, and who they are. So this effort to reach the hard to reach, the vulnerable, and people who are not routinely reached by services because of various barriers is in line with that vision that we must have universal health coverage. And the primary health care is very critical. We are not only looking at immunization services for children, but we are looking at a range of services because children are vulnerable to several diseases, not just vaccine-preventable diseases, and people out there at large also need the services, curative services, preventive services, to aim for health for all, no matter where you are. So WHO is in line with what is being done by the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency to promote health for all. And we are very much encouraged and advocate that this program be implemented as planned.
All right, Dr. Shoaib, I read in the newspaper this morning that about 3 million Nigerian children are not immunized. Is that true? And if it is, when did it get that bad? And how will this program address that?
Right, it's absolutely true. It's always been bad, right? But for many years, there's been inadequate investment in primary health care. But with the advent of this administration, right, instead of really data in the past that will show coverage rates of 100%, 80% in routine immunization, with the spirit of transparency and accountability of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, it became very clear that we could not continue to lie to ourselves that we were having coverage rates of 80% or 100% when we continue to have outbreaks of diseases, right? So for the first time in our lives, we said the data shows that we have probably no more than 33% coverage. The surveys that were conducted in 2016, 2017 showed that level of coverage. So we said, okay, yes, we'll take it from there. But how do we improve on that? So the data around 3 million kids that have not been vaccinated is an accumulation of several years of poor routine immunization services. This is exactly why the federal government, along with the partner, says we cannot continue to have so many kids unimmunized. Instead, we're rolling out this IMOP to make sure that all of these kids that have not been vaccinated get the vaccines that they need. As you are well aware, Mr. President has made it very clear that primary health care is the center of his healthcare trust. The Honorable Minister of Health has also made it very clear that we must deliver primary health care to all our citizens. That is why we're rolling out this everywhere it matters, to make sure that all the women, all the children, everybody that is in these 409 local governments is able to access primary health care services. And by so doing, we will improve routine immunization coverage and cut down on the number of kids that are unimmunized.
No question about it that your agency will be the primary driver of this whole process. It's become our obsession on Good Morning Nigeria to always interrogate the role of the subnational entities in cascading down your activities or your programs. So what do we expect the states and local governments, and indeed CBOs, community-based organizations, what roles do we expect from them in this particular initiative?
Right, so in terms of co-creating the idea, we've, right from the get-go, engaged with the states. So they have been partners in developing the ideas around cutting down on the number of unimmunized kids, cutting down the number of people who do not have access to primary health care services. So apart from the state government, we're also engaging the local government areas, community-based organizations, but very, very importantly, the community gatekeepers, our traditional leaders. They are in the forefront of making sure that as we plan to get to these hard-to-reach areas, a number of people, even at the state level, do not know all the hard-to-reach areas. But when you have traditional leaders around the table doing a micro plan to understand where the settlements are, you see that everybody is involved in the planning process. So implementation now becomes much, much easier, right? So we have a wide range of critical stakeholders who are involved really in the implementation of this program. And this is what gives us confidence that we'll be successful, because it is a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach, making sure everybody is involved and everybody is very clear about what the deliverables are.
Well, we wish you well, because I'm sure my colleague Kinsley asked that question, because of all policies that have been churned out by the federal government, some of them don't get down to the grassroots, because they don't have cooperation from the subnational level. It has happened in other, but we're wishing it's not going to happen to you this time around. Dr. Omotoyobolu, what is the U.S. Center for Disease Control bringing into this? I mean, what are you bringing to the table?
Thank you very much. So the U.S. CDC, including other U.S. government agencies, are supporting the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency in terms of helping to make sure people are well trained, even as we roll out these IMOP activities. Make sure we have, through our partners that we fund, they are out there supporting, promoting, encouraging, conducting social mobilization for people to come and receive those services. In addition to that, we are looking at the data. You know, how many people were immunized before we started? How many people have been immunized after we started? So that we see, has there been a difference and has there been a change? So like Dr. Faisal mentioned, there are going to be 3 rounds so that you can capture not just at one point in time, but over 3 times. And we would be looking at the data significantly to make sure, is it making a difference? Is it reducing the number of, from that 3 million further down? And then how does it affect routine immunization even going forward? And it's not just about routine immunization. It's primary health care, providing basic services. So for us as U.S. government, we are providing resources. We are supporting the routine immunization activities. We are supporting partners and people to help with the process, with the training, with the services as well.
What time frame, WHO, what time frame is allocated for this IMOP? Is it a 6-month, a 1 year, a 10-year, 5-year program?
So Nigeria is aiming to achieve 85% coverage by 2028. And that is a fairly reasonable milestone. We realize that a lot of effort will be needed to reach that milestone. And while we strengthen the primary healthcare services, such interventions like rapid intensification of activities to clear backlog of children that are not being reached routinely will help us to reach that target. As per the projections, there would be 3 rounds that are done this year, and the program is aiming to reach about 70% coverage. Now, to help us reach that 70%, it's not just the IMOP intervention. We are also relying on the fact that routine service delivery would also be going hand in hand. So we need to promote both the efforts to strengthen routine immunization systems as well as the rapid intensification to clear the backlog. And we see this as a gradual step process to get us to our aim of 85% coverage.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this segment of our program today. I'd like to appreciate you for being here and for, of course, explaining to Nigerians what your mission is and how possible it's going to be achieved. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Faisal Shoaib, Executive Director and CEO, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. It's been good hearing from you this morning. And Dr. Omar Tayobolu, U.S. Center for Disease Control, we thank you for what you're doing for Nigeria, especially in the area of health. And of course, Dr. Fiona Braka, Officer in Charge, World Health Organization, thank you also for joining us. Kisla, I wish we had time to discuss coronavirus.
Yeah, that's very, very important. But primary health care, of course, is key to our state of health as a people.
Exactly.
On that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in. Good Morning Nigeria returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day.